Hey guys, I'm back with more RPGs I played recently that I just need to talk about. 2 Japanese RPGs, 2 indie RPGs, and 1 little surprise at the end. As before, I'll make a deeper analysis than normal by reviewing these games, so let's begin. I'm gonna start with Astra Ascending. Astra Ascending is a collaboration between French studio Artisan Studios and 2 Japanese legends, Kazushige Nojima as the writer, mainly known as one of the writers of Final Fantasy VII, and Hitoshi Sakimoto, that's right, the music composer who created the soundtrack of Final Fantasy Tactics, Valkyria Chronicles, and all the Vanillaware games. Astria is a 2D turn-based RPG with notorious influence from RPGs like Odin Sphere and Valkyrie Profile. Just like in the latter, the exploration includes several platforming elements and puzzle solving. Controls feel fine even though Ulan, the main character, can be somewhat slippery. Puzzles go from really interesting to really annoying. Most are pretty generic, but others are really well thought out. Graphically speaking, the game looks absolutely beautiful, with some controversial art here and there, but not really for the main characters. You actually control all 8 protagonists right from the start, each with their own starting job. More on that in a bit. They're all the current demigods known as the Fated 8, who are pretty much the guardians of the world. What they're guarding, though, is primarily a doctrine known as harmony, where people from all different species live together and eat a specific fruit. This fruit keeps people in check, harmoniously, something that the main antagonists start to rebel against. Now, Astra Ascending is a linear type of game for the most part until late when you unlock a pseudo-open world feature full of side quests. A big amount of time will take place inside the big demigod city, being often attacked by creatures under the enemy's control. Apart from fighting them, you'll control Ulan going through several dungeons as the party leader. Combat is played in turns with up to 4 active but switchable characters. Each has a specific type of weapon equipped and they can use regular attacks and abilities. Abilities are elemental and the battle system revolves strongly around it. Exploiting an enemy's weakness increases your force bar, a feature you can use similar as in Octopath Traveler, where you can greatly increase the damage of your next action by charging it. Buffs and healing are included. Sounds like solid combat, right? It is, but unfortunately, like many indie RPGs out there, its difficulty is ridiculously cheap. The game actually got a lot of backlash because of how unfair it was, almost to the point of being broken. Enemies start nearly every single time and gang up on you before you can do anything. Abilities cost a lot and you run out of MP quickly, and if enemies exploit your weaknesses, kiss your party goodbye. It's brutal. In fact, this is the hardest indie RPG I've played in my life, next to Indivisible. Fortunately, however, developers included an easy and even a very easy mode. The difference is abysmal. Easy mode does not feel easy at all, but it's not as ungracious as normal or hard. Very easy though is a complete and utter walk in the park. What I did to avoid endless hours of grinding was simply traverse everything on very easy mode and then change it to normal or easy sometimes for the bosses. And trust me, I still got a decent challenge out of them and enjoyed the game a lot this way. Since the story doesn't offer you a lot of great character development and its gameplay mechanics are repetitive, boss battles are the best things about it. Boss or not, all battles give you experience points and skill points. Skill points you will use to unlock new abilities regardless of the job. However, for the stat increases, you need stat orbs, something I felt was annoying and pointless, but whatever. As you make progress, you'll start getting items to change a character's job. By doing so, they will unlock a new skill tree, but still keeping the original one. I'm not a fan of job systems, but I like the one in these games since there were barely any penalties in changing jobs. As a matter of fact, it encourages you to do so because you simply get more powerful right away. There's also other cool features like Alessia being able to summon some of the spiritual bosses to fight in your stead, or these simple yet entertaining shoot-em-up missions between some areas late in the game. Overall, it's an excellent RPG, but only if you find a way to enjoy it like I did. The one thing that saved me from ranting and trashing it was precisely the addition of difficulty settings. They could have been unnecessary had they put more testing and more attention to the balance. Without them, honestly, this game would have been unplayable for me. Next is Yakuza Like a Dragon. I promised that I would properly review this game, and here I am. This is the 7th title in the Yakuza series, known in Japan as the Like a Dragon series. Well, that's confusing. The subtitle for this one is meant to symbolize a brand new arc, since all the previous games follow the same protagonist and his journey. From now on, I think, all games will be called Like a Dragon and not Yakuza. Anyway, this is about Ichiban Kasuga, a humble and charismatic errand boy for a Yakuza family who takes the blame for a murder per request of his boss and ends up in jail. When he comes out, a long series of confusing and unfortunate events lead up to Kasuga teaming up with some shady allies to go after his ex-boss and Yakuza family. Listen, this is one of those games where the story is so hard to narrow down because a lot of things happen one after another, hence why it's basically an open world RPG with 3 cities at the center. However, the majority of the game will take place in Ijincho, Yokohama, a district pretty much run by a Japanese, a Chinese, and a Korean mafia. All you need to know is that this game has a terrific story, one of the best I've seen in a modern JRPG so far. I mentioned it was an open world. You can go anywhere you want within the confines of the city, perform all sorts of side quests, minigames, and bonding events. The minigames I usually skipped, but there were a few I enjoyed now and then. You explore in a very immersive way, so immersive there's no music. Yeah, except for scenes and battles of course, but there's no town theme or anything. The sounds of the district will accompany you everywhere you go. Now this game has random encounters. You can see the enemies on the map and a few feet away from you and escape if you want to, but if you don't, you'll get into a battle. An excellent turn-based system will meet you there. Up to 4 active members can participate using regular attacks, abilities, items, and combination attacks called team tags. Terrain can affect a bit, including objects lying around, which is why you see both enemies and allies moving around. It's still turn-based with no active waiting bar or anything like that, so don't worry, everyone has to wait for their turn. I love this combat, but there's a downside to it. No difficulty settings are there, which is fine, but it has some really nasty spikes, especially one on chapter 12, Legendary, which made the entire internet complain about it. My advice is to grind in the arena, so you'll get a lot of experience and some of the best equipment in the game. Still though, these types of spikes shouldn't exist in video games. Fortunately, despite those horrible spikes I mentioned, about 80% of the game is a cakewalk. I mean it, it's too easy and friendly for beginners. A job system is here, there's an office you go to change anyone's job. They will retain their level, but their stats will greatly decrease because of their job rank. It will go back to 1. They will also have to change their weapon to something different. Their outfit will also change. I only use this job system for one character. I'm not a fan of having my stats downgraded just for using it. Plus, to be honest, it felt somewhat irrelevant. Barely any difference in battle performance. The graphics are fantastic. You can clearly see Sega put a lot of money and effort into that. However, it falls short on several cutscenes with character expressions and movement being just plain weird. The music is decent, some catchy tunes here and there, but I wasn't the biggest fan of it as a whole. Overall, despite my aforementioned gripes, I still love this game. Story, characters and combat are the best part of it. This is a strongly recommended game even if you're not a fan of the series and haven't played a single one of them. And yes, it's okay to start with this one. Next is Cthulhu Saves Christmas. Another indie RPG here. Yes, this is an actual game and it'll surprise you to know it was developed by Zeboyd Games, the same developers behind Cosmic Star Heroine. One of their first games was the 8-bit inspired Cthulhu Saves the World. This is its prequel. It's a very short and silly game that you can beat in 5 or 7 hours, but it's really good. You play as Cthulhu, the legendary Lovecraftian character, in a quest to take his powers back from several evil lords by rescuing Santa Claus. Oh yeah. He will meet 3 allies as nonsensical and funny as they come to aid him in his quest. It is a game you'll also play for the story, as it's a top-notch comedy with tons of great puns and jokes. Graphic style is 16-bit this time and everything looks colorful in all the pixel glory. One gripe I did have is that entire areas or dungeons repeat a lot of assets over and over, so they look identical no matter where you go. I don't think there was a lot of budget for this game, but that's okay. After every long mission, you'll be back in town. Here you can spend time with your allies to get better equipment and items as a reward, also increasing your bond. You can do the same with random NPCs that you can befriend if you want to. I personally gave priority to my party members and managed to watch all of their events. If you played Cosmic Star Heroine, then it won't surprise you to know the music is outstanding here, but this was composed by Joshua Quinn. Some tunes, like the battle themes, are very worth listening outside of the game. Now let's talk about the best feature, which is the combat. Every character will learn several abilities throughout the adventure, but they can only use 8 in battle. Some are regular attacks, others elemental, others buffs, debuffs, healing spells, there's a bit of everything, but once you use one of these abilities, you can't use it anymore unless you recharge. You use an entire turn to recharge these abilities. So paying attention to character stats will let you know which abilities are worth equipping. All enemies are weak to a bunch of things that can go from physical to elemental attacks or even status effects. But man, they sure love abusing those status effects on you! You can also use items, but there's a limit to how many you can equip. And that's the addictive part of the game. Just using these random skills or items, choosing which ones to use first on each character's turn, deciding whether you'll keep using a reusable skill or waste a turn recovering them all. There are also combination attacks between characters which can be really useful in battle. This isn't a hard game per se, but it can be quite challenging sometimes. You will find this dumb but charming RPG on Switch, PS5 and Windows digitally, often for dirt cheap. Physical editions are handled by limited run games. I haven't played the first game and I didn't feel it was necessary to start with, but I can only guess it's just as good as this one, which I strongly recommend. Moving on to Adventure Academia. From the creators of Class of Heroes, Tenchu and Octopath Traveler, this little hidden gem was a surprise. It's barely a couple of months old. Actually, it's set in the same universe as Class of Heroes 1 and 2. You play as a magic student in search for his father, the director of a magic academy. He'll start a journey with a couple of assistants, but with the help of other students. These are generic, customizable characters, each with a specific class. The entire gameplay will be carried out by some dialogue scenes, a mission, and customization at the school. Just like in Class of Heroes, you can recruit several characters, but only 6 can join in battle and be in the active party. Every time you recruit one though, they'll be at level 1. Now, this is a real-time strategy RPG. You play in these maps where your characters will move on grids automatically, except for Alex. You have to move him manually with the menus, selecting the grid you want him to go to. Initially, you can summon up to 2 characters and position them within Alex's range. They'll move and attack on their own, so putting them near the enemies you want to defeat first is better. Eventually, they'll learn some magic to use in battle as well. As you've probably noticed, there's a time limit. That's right, you gotta complete the maps in the allotted time. It can be somewhat stressful, but they do give you a lot of time to do everything. After a few seconds, you'll be able to summon more characters up until all 6 are fighting. You can use points to rank them up, increasing their fighting abilities as the battle progresses. Those points will quickly increase no matter what, so you need to decide who to rank first in real time, even Alex, and so on. If a character dies, you can resummon them after a short while. As long as Alex is alive, you can keep things running, but if he dies, it's game over. Sometimes you'll need to find the most convenient way to reach some enemies or a specific mid-boss, and there's also side quest maps that I recommend doing as this game is very grindy. At base, you can assign them a homework which increases their abilities, but you'll need points for that. You can also buy items and change your party's equipment, even though economy is a pain here, everything is expensive. I also never liked the fact that every time you recruit someone new, like I mentioned, they're level 1 and you gotta grind their way up. I always find it best to stick to my main party from the beginning of the game and that's it. Anyway, these battle mechanics are intense and that's what makes it a bit of an addictive game. It's a lot of fun, but you won't play the game for its story or character design unless you're a big fan of chibi and cute styles. Overall, apart from its fun real-time strategy ideas, the rest is very generic. I still recommend it, mostly for its combat. And finally, Judgment. Surprise! This is not an RPG. It does have strong RPG elements, but I don't think it's one. A lot of people do think it's one though, so why is it here if the title says RPGs I need to talk about? I don't know, I just wanted to add a little surprise. Plus, when the hell will I get to review it again? This is a spin-off of the Yakuza series and takes place in the city of Kamurocho, the same initial city from Like a Dragon. You control Takayuki Yagami, aka Tak or Tavo like the Japanese voice actors pronounce it. He quits being a lawyer because he sets free a guy accused of murder, but after being released, the same guy apparently kills his own girlfriend. Tavo can't stand his mistake, quits, and starts a private detective agency with his ex-Yakuza friend, Kaito. Let me say this right off the bat. Killer, absolutely killer mature story here. Excellent narrative and writing compel a dark, modern noir story full of interesting plot twists. Now, this is an action-adventure game with several cool gameplay mechanics, but its main feature is its combat, a 3D beat-em-up. Sometimes you'll have an ally or two controlled by AI, but Yagami will be by himself the majority of the game. I always felt the controls somewhat clunky, moving Yagami around for defense encounters was hard. Even on easy mode, I got my ass kicked several times. I know I suck at 3D beat-em-ups, but I insist the controls aren't stellar here. He can pull out a variety of combos with the square and triangle buttons, but also grab enemies and things around to perform cool attacks or finishing moves. He has two stances, the regular one which is best for crowd control, and the tiger one which overpowers him temporarily and it's best used for individual enemies or bosses. The game's quite challenging but not brutal, it's fair most of the time. Gameplay wise, you'll be going back and forth between places all around the city. Occasionally, you'll get into fights with random Yakuza walking around who hate your guts. To be honest, the backtracking was boring and my least favorite part of the game. You do it a hell of a lot and even grabbing taxis can often be a bit of a chore. By far my favorite thing, however, was the tailing missions. Often, Yagami will either pursue enemies or follow them a la Metal Gear. You have to prevent them from noticing you, and if they do, a bar will slowly fill up to alert them completely, leading to a game over. But you always have enough time to find a place to hide. I love this feature, story-wise it doesn't happen that often, but several side quests revolve around it, which is cool. The pursuing missions are just that, running after a specific person while avoiding objects in quick time events. These were okay, not a big fan, but I enjoyed them. Finally, you'll also perform investigations in first person with either a camera or a drone. The camera lets you move around a bit to find clues. You need to focus on these clues to get them all and complete your investigation. This was always very fun to do. The drone isn't exactly in first person, you actually control it, but it's a huge pain in the ass. I hated these parts, thank goodness there are just a few in the game. All sorts of events can be performed as well, like friendship events with random NPCs around town. There's also food you can eat, some will recover HP, and a lot of items you can buy. You gain SP after every battle, which is used to unlock all three types of skills: combat skills, investigation skills, and miscellaneous skills. The latter includes some small mechanics such as lockpicking and a better use for the camera. You also get money to buy stuff, but since there's no equipment system, you'll get rich in no time. So you see, the RPG elements are there, however there's no leveling system, no stats system, no customization system, and like I mentioned, no equipment whatsoever. But it does quite focus on the narrative and making the right choices during certain dialogue scenes. Not what I will call an RPG, but still a really outstanding game. Super strongly recommended, guys. It's also been remastered on PS5 recently. There's a direct sequel on both systems, but I haven't played it. Alright, those were 5 games I needed to talk about. I have no excuse for judgment, but I really wanted to review it. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!